You know, I want to make an appeal to us all to spend more time with God. Now, if you think about it, when do you feel loved? When do you feel like somebody really loves you, really cares about you? It's when they're spending time with you. Sometimes that can be just time on the phone or mental time, or somebody says they're praying for you. But when people spend time with you, that's when you know that you're really loved. And you know, the same thing is true with God. And we're supposed to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. So what does that mean? That translates as spending time with God. You know, it was an expert in the law who came to Christ and his disciples, and then he talked to Christ. This is Mark chapter 12, verse 28. What commandment is the first of all? And in verse 29, Jesus answered, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is Lord alone, and so you are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And that's how we're supposed to love God, with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But, you know, what does that mean? That means if we really love God, we give him our time. So I've got to ask myself, I've got to ask you, where do I spend my time? Where do you spend your time? What takes your time? And not just your physical time where you're doing stuff, but your mental time where you have a choice. You can either be thinking about this thing or this thing. And how much of our mental time do we spend with God? It is astounding how in a very, very short period of time, basically all of our free time has been robbed by stuff. For example, let's take a look at where we spend our time. Lots of people spend time listening to the radio. You know, they're driving in their car or whatever. They're listening to the radio. Great. It was the 1920s. In fact, it was the year 1920 saw the first radio news and the first radio entertainment. Now, not many people had radios back in 1920, but 1920, that's less than 100 years ago. There wasn't any radio to listen to at all. How about black and white TV? Well, the world's first 625-line black and white television, designed in 1944, became standard in 1946. That's less than 60 years ago. Less than 60 years ago, there was no TV. And color TV? Well, it was the mid-60s when color TV started selling in large numbers. That's less than 50 years ago. I can remember when there was no color TV. That dates me. But, I mean, that shows you. There wasn't any color TV to watch. Cell phones, well, that's ridiculous. The first really commercially, what you and I would know as an actual cell phone. I mean, there were some cell phone things. But what you and I would actually call a real cell phone first came out, it was the Advanced Mobile Phone System, commercially introduced on October 13th, 1983, 35 years ago. There's a lot of you watching this that aren't close to, you're over 35. Absolutely. If you're over 35, you didn't have a cell phone to distract you. Well, then you get into text messages. Well, geez, 1993, the first human-to-human text message was sent. Less than 25 years ago. And of course, Facebook, you got to be kidding me, 2004, less than 15 years ago. So if it's less than 100 years ago when there wasn't even any radio, forget television, forget cell phones, forget Facebook, forget that kind of stuff. CD players, you know, and even that's outdated. Video games. None of that stuff existed. So it's like, wow, you know what people had? They had time. And if you want to see that for yourself, I even hesitate to recommend this because your friends are going to think you've died. They're going to call the police are going to show up at your door or something. But just go completely non-electronic for a weekend. Do you want to try it? No cell phone, no TV, no radio, no CD player, no nothing. Completely electronic, distraction free. And all of it's all of a sudden you're sitting around going, I'm bored to tears. What did people used to do? That's a great question. What did people used to do 100 years ago before there was even radio? Well, for one thing, they met with their friends. They did a lot of reading of books. There were libraries. Even little dinky towns had libraries, absolutely. And that meant they read their Bible as well. The older generation is much more educated on the Bible than the modern generation. Why? that's what they could do. And they had so much free time, absolutely. And then prayer, of course, lots of time for prayer. I happen to think one of the great losses with all the distractions that we have is lack of prayer time. The average Christian does not devote much personal time to prayer at all. And that's a gigantic loss, absolutely. And then, of course, one huge thing you can do with your time, organize your life and learn, just reflect. Not just what am I doing? Oh my gosh, if we're talking about being busy, I'm around so many busy people. You get up in the morning, you get the TV going in this room, you get the radio going in that room, you're on Facebook over here, you're so busy, and you go through the day and you've done all this stuff. But have you really answered the question, God, why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here with the ministry that I have? What am I supposed to be bringing to the table for the world? You know, what does the adversary want you to do? He wants you to just be busy through your whole life. And then when you're older and you're on your deathbed, you're thinking, wow, I didn't really accomplish much. I sure was busy, but I didn't accomplish much. And you know, you and I don't want to be in that predicament. We don't want to be in that position. You and I want to feel like we're accomplishing something for God. That requires thought time, and thought time requires time. And if there's absolutely no distractions, then we get around and think, why am I here? What could I be doing? And we think about all the different things that we could accomplish if I wasn't watching this TV show. And as we've been taught, you know, saying yes to one thing is saying no to another. Saying yes to watching 5-6 hours of football on a Sunday afternoon in football season is saying no to all the other things you could be doing. And a lot of people I run into, they talk about how their life is disorganized. You know, their closets are disorganized, their shelves are disorganized, their cabinets are disorganized, their life is disorganized. They run around with a cell phone and they take zillions of pictures, and their pictures are disorganized. It's like, wow, where do you find the time? Oh, where do you find the time? You find the time by saying no to some of the things that take up your time. And because I think prayer is so important, I want to lobby for prayer as well, because really so much of the spiritual battle that reflects itself in the physical world. So much of the world we see around us in the spiritual battle is influenced by our prayer. And, you know, Christ was aware of that and he prayed, and the disciples were aware that Christ's prayer mattered. And then, of course, the New Testament tells us to pray. So Luke, for example, Luke 11, chapter 11, verse 1, and it came to pass as he was praying in a certain place. This is Jesus. Where is he? He's off by himself, and he's praying. And he's praying in a certain place, that when he finished, one of his disciples said to him, Lord, teach us to pray, just as John also taught his disciples. Even John the Baptist, see, he knew the power of prayer and the importance of prayer. So John, when someone would come along and be a disciple, John would sit him down and teach him the importance of prayer. And so this disciple comes to Christ, watching Christ pray, and go, hey, teach us to do that too. What a cool thing for a person to ask. Teach me to pray so I have powerful, meaningful prayers. Luke chapter 18, verse 1. And Jesus spoke a parable to them, to his disciples, about the necessity for them always to pray and not become discouraged. Because sometimes when you pray, nothing seems to happen, you become discouraged. Well, we shouldn't be. Prayer moves mountains in the spiritual world. Romans 12:12. As to prayer, continuing steadfastly. Ephesians 6:18, be praying at all times in the Spirit with all kinds of prayer and supplication. And to that end, keep watching with all perseverance and supplication for all the holy ones. Colossians 4:2, continue steadfastly in prayer, staying alert in it with thanksgiving. 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing. You and I actually have a lot of time. It gets used up by all kinds of modern conveniences. But if we have the discipline, the self-control to do what it takes to, put God first, love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, before you turn on that TV or before you start playing that video game, or before you go check your Facebook, ask yourself, have I read the Bible at all today? Have I prayed at all today through a prayer list, praying things that are important that God brings up to me to pray for? And have I taken any time to organize my life and be wise? Or am I just going to do something now because it's available and because I'm feeling pressure to get on Facebook or whatever it is? We don't want to be pressured by the world. Remember, Romans 12 says the world wants you to conform to itself. And what's the devil want? The devil wants to keep you completely busy until you're on your deathbed and you look back and you say, wow, I was really busy. But did I really get accomplished the things that I wish I had gotten accomplished? We got plenty of time. Let's use it and love God.